Welcome to our Saturday lecture. Glad you could be here, and this is week 4. What we have going on, I'm looking at our course outline. Okay, if you want to get yours out and look along with. We're introducing Project 4 today. We're going to go over your worksheets that have to do with the treatment that's going to be coming due. Let's see. It's actually due in 2 weeks, so it gives you 2 weeks to work on it, but I'd like to introduce it today. We're going to be also going over our test review, and it looks like the Avid, what I'm going to do is to give you some nice little links that you can go and look at how to work with your audio and to make your rolling credit and your credit at the beginning. Fairly simple, and if need be, we'll talk about a little time at the beginning of class next week so that you can finish those up if need be, because we're losing the time I plan to give you today to actually do your editing. But anyway, let's begin with our review for the test. The test begins this Wednesday, 6 o'clock in the morning. It will finish on Friday at 6 o'clock. You're expected to have read your chapters. The review I go over today will be helpful, but it's not going to help you to pass if you have not read. So please make sure between now and Wednesday that you've read the book and you have a clue what's going on. I sent everybody a nice little bullet list of the concepts that you're responsible for, and we're going to kind of go over things right now. So this test is worth 100 points or 10% of your score. They're multiple choice, fill in the blank, and short answer. And obviously, as wonderful as Blackboard is, it will not grade your short answer or fill in the blank. I have to do that. And it will automatically mark anything wrong that you have misspelled. If you are close and I understand what you're talking about, I will be giving you credit. So no worries there. So the first thing I'd like to ask you is, what is the opening in the lens that allows light into the camera? Okay. This is called the aperture. It's basically just the opening. It has nothing to do with the inner workings inside. It's just the opening. That's the aperture. Next, I'd like to ask you, how would you describe depth of field? According to our book, it's the distance between the nearest and the farthest objects in focus. If you're looking at me sitting here, I would be the nearest object, and the plant sitting slightly behind me and maybe the doorknob, those are the furthest away. That's the depth of field for this particular spot. So that's what we're talking about. There's more information in the book concerning that. Back to, and by the way, my apologies, but this is intentionally all out of order. It doesn't line up directly from the book in order of how it's presented there, because you're expected to do some footwork in preparation. So the next question is, what do you call the actual moving diaphragm of the lens? Okay, we talked about the aperture is the little opening in the front, but when we change our f-stop, something happens inside, and it's not the aperture that changes. That's still the same opening that you see if you would just turn the camera around and look at it. Instead, we have moving parts. They're kind of metal, they're in a circle, they overlap each other, making that circle. Excuse me. And that is called your iris. As you increase the number of your f-stop, the iris will get smaller. When the number of the f-stop gets smaller, the opening gets larger. There's a diagram in the book that will also show you this. What do we call the imaginary line along the direction of action in a scene? And our camera should only be shooting from one side of this line so as not to confuse the audience. This is called the action line. Imagine the best example is probably a basketball game, and our action line from one side of the court will always have the red team on the right to score, the blue team is scoring to the left, and the audience then is not confused, they know what's going on. If I take my camera to the other side of the court, all of a sudden everything is reversed and the red team goes on the opposite side and the blue team, and your audience would not have a clue what was going on. So we try not to confuse our audience. This is our action line. You'll also see it in reference later to the 180-degree rule, which tells you to shoot on one side of the line. You should be able to describe camera movements. In class we reviewed and you've used the tilt where the camera goes up and down, the pan where the camera goes from side to side, a dolly, the camera tripod is literally on wheels and you can move the whole camera forward or backward. Dolly shots don't normally go too much further, it just depends on where you're shooting. When you get into a situation where the camera is moving alongside people who are walking, having a conversation, it's usually on tracks, and that would be a truck. Okay, so we have dolly shot, moving forward and backwards. We have a truck shot, moving along with people when they're talking, and then you have your tilt and your pan. The proper way to frame a shot. Right now you're looking at me and you can see I have very little headroom at the top. Okay, so this is a medium shot of me from the chest to the top of the head, kind of a medium close-up actually. If I went down a little bit further it would be more of a medium shot, but this is pretty much what you're looking at here. Okay, if I was to be really low in the frame like this, would not look real appealing. There's way too much headroom. Okay, so we want to be careful when we frame a shot that we're going to be framing it accordingly. I've also, because I'm kind of going along with that documentary style, because I'm sitting here talking with you, I've positioned myself more to one side of the screen. Okay, not everything needs to be centered. I don't have a lot of places here that are interesting to shoot with because there's a lot of white walls and open window, but you would look for a better look. We also talk about the rule of thirds, where you break your frame into 3 squares across, 3 squares down, and we try to set it up so that we make it most interesting. And we have, like right now, I have the plant is taking up some of that room, and I'm taking up the other probably 2/3 of the screen myself. If I was to make this bigger, you would find I have what's called negative space because it's all white behind me. There's nothing going on there. There's nothing engaging. And the rule of thirds is about trying to frame in an engaging manner. Okay, that is very detailed in the book. Is a DSLR. We know that we were able to shoot photographs with that camera and shoot video. That's what's unusual about the DSLR. That camera is usually used by a variety of filmmakers. There's better cameras. The T2i is the low end, but there's some downsides to the DSLR as well. We know that it is inexpensive, so that's a good thing. It's small, not a lot to carry around. That's a good thing. And it's got qualities of high def that are lovely to look at. Another good quality. Some of the bad qualities is it's really difficult to do handheld with that small camera because it shakes. The other things going on with it is, especially, is the audio. It has very inferior audio coming through the onboard microphone, and you need to get a better microphone, another source, a Zoom recorder, to record audio if you're going to be using that for filmmaking. Those are the downsides. There's a complete list in your book. Please be familiar with it. You'll be asked to know some of those things. Why bother with a tripod? Hence, we just talked about with cameras in general, not just the T2i, but the steady camera on the tripod will always give you a nicer shot rather than a jiggling movement shot, which you've probably all seen when you looked at your footage that you just shot. If you did that truck shot where you moved in and out, the tracking shot, where you walked with the camera holding it in your hand, okay? Give you an idea. We talked about the f-stop. If the f-stop is larger, it's darker. The image will be darker. If the f-stop is open and having the smaller number, you're going to have more light coming in. Right now, because I've got the sun coming in the window, I've kind of got it at a midway point, okay, to allow for that. What are the aspect ratios of a standard television and an HD model? Okay, our old-time televisions that many of you may still have in the house has a 4:6 ratio. Okay, the nice flat screen like we have in the lab that we watch in the classroom, that's a 16:9 ratio. What type of angle does a short focal length give you? Okay, that would be a wide angle. There's some things that you should avoid when you're framing people in the shot, and that would include letting the frame cut people at natural joints. Okay, so you're cutting off part of the body because they're maybe on the edge of the frame, or you just have them too far over. Having people lean or sit on the edge of the picture. Okay, so here I am leaning over here, and this is how you're shooting me. Not real good. Okay. Having the shot frame too close to where you can't see my movement, okay, total movement. So if you were shooting this for a documentary and I got excited and I started talking with my hands and, you know, you felt a need to get all of that, you need to come out and get wider, okay? If I'm sitting here calm, cool, and collected and just talking to you, it would be fine to leave it framed just like this. The other thing is, I'm sitting in a chair that has some movement, and I did center myself a little bit more so I wouldn't go out of frame, but had my chair been moved over a little bit, okay, all of a sudden, you know, if I started to swivel a little bit, I'm going to be leaving the frame, okay? You could be shooting someone who's standing, and you see the same thing. They start leaving the frame because they're maybe moving from foot to foot. Okay, so you need to come out and have a wider shot on them. What do we call the camera control that automatically adjusts a camera's color balance control? Okay, we talked about the light temperature. If we're looking at the video we shoot outdoors, okay, it will have a bluish cast to it. The squeaking you hear is Murphy playing with a toy, sorry. The indoor shots have a reddish tint to them, reddish yellowish tint to them. So we will white balance the camera to tell the camera what the natural white would be in that scene. So it will know the difference and can make it look crisp, clear, and natural for you. And how often do we white balance? Every time the lighting conditions change. For my situation sitting here, there's not too much change going on. My window is actually casting light behind me and on the side. You can see it reflecting. And it's cloudy outside. Doesn't mean it's not bright, but it's not going to change. I don't have the sun coming out from the clouds. The light that's behind the camera kind of shining this way a little bit. That's not changing. So I've white balanced one time for this whole video. I don't have to do anything else with it. If I take the camera and I turn it around and I face towards my kitchen or the hallway, I would need to white balance again. Every time the lighting changes, you will white balance. You will also most likely need to work your exposure and fix it. What is the difference between a prime lens and a variable lens? Okay, important to know. In the future at the lab, when you get into higher level classes, you're going to use some of the other Canon DSLR cameras, the 7D, and I forget what the other one is, but we've got nice higher level cameras, and they've got a beautiful set of lenses that will screw into the front of them. They do not have the zoom adjustment the same way as a digital video camera would. You're using those lenses to compensate. As you know from using the Canon T2i, that little lens only has so much capability. You have to pick up the camera and get closer if you really truly want to zoom in on something. Okay, so the prime lens, the focal length is fixed. It is what it is. On a variable, it is digitally altered. It's a zoom lens, my camera I'm using today is a video camera. I can hit the buttons on top and I can zoom in and zoom out, okay? And there's no interchangeable lenses for this particular camera beyond maybe just a wide angle. What is exposure? We've talked about the f-stop. If the f-stop is not open enough, our image is going to be on the dark side, could even be a little bit grainy, okay? Be dull, more dull. And if it's overexposed, I've got that iris open way too much, especially with this bright sun and the snow outside, the image is going to appear very light and bright. You need to know what the differences are, okay? It's very important. So underexposed is dark, overexposed is too bright. How do you pre-focus a zoom, and why would you pre-focus a zoom? Okay. When I sat down to videotape this, I'd already focused the camera for where this chair is sitting. I had Murphy sit in the chair, and I zoomed all the way in on Murphy, extreme close-up, and looking at his little doggy eyes and his nose, I focused the camera, I adjusted the ring, and then I zoomed out and framed it appropriately. This would allow me, at this point where the camera is sitting, if I had a camera person and they wanted to zoom in when they came in close, maybe this was a very emotional lecture I'm doing and I got teary-eyed and they wanted to catch the emotion and they zoomed in, they could do it and have everything crisp and clear and in focus. Okay, it's really, really important that your camera is always in focus. One of the explanations from the book, and I'm going to read this to you because it talks about depth of field with the pre-focus of the zoom. I've got my own little cheat sheet notes here. If you do not pre-focus the camera, when you zoom in, change the depth of field, the object might come out of focus when you zoom in, okay? A lot of times something might be going on in the back of the area where you're shooting and you want to zoom in on that, maybe past whoever's talking. Think about a news anchor that's standing outside and they're talking and there's some action going on. They want to get in on it. They're going to have to make sure that camera is ready to go. Okay, the textbook talks about ways of shooting handheld for the best results. Okay, that list is in the book. I expect you to look it over. Some of the things they talk about are balancing with your elbows. I've got a chair with armrest here, so my hands will not move as much when I hold the camera. I can lean onto a table to shoot. I could lean against the wall with my back and lock my elbows in. That will help me to stay steady. As humans, we tend to sway a little bit even when we stand up. Don't always realize you're doing it, but once the camera is on, you will see that you don't stand totally still, okay? You can lay on the ground, prop your elbows on the ground. You could sit on the ground, prop your elbows against your knee. The main thing is to find some support place that you can work with. Some of the other things that we've done in the past is you want to maybe get in the stairwell and you want to slide that camera down the rail. Maybe that's going to be your shot rather than the walking tracking shot. You could take and put a sweatshirt or a towel on the rail, set the camera on top, holding onto it with your hands, and as you shoot, you slide gently down the rail. That's another way. There's a variety of things that you can do. Okay, one of the others, this is kind of a concept question. Pretend we have a long study room. For example, the main classroom in the lab has the long table, and I've got my camera at the front of the table, okay? And there's people sitting all the way to the back, okay? And I am going to have two options of shooting this. The first, I'm going to use the zoom on my camera, and I'm simply going to zoom in, okay? Or in my case, it's a video camera, and so it zooms in. And what we're going to see as it zooms, as the people will just simply disappear from the frame until we have the back of the frame. The whole room is not shown. It is like a long tunnel vision look to it, okay? Book explains it real well too, so make sure you do look this up in the book. It's all laid out for you. The other thing we can do to move our camera, put it on dolly wheels. What's it going to look like when I've got my camera and I'm going to move? And because they use in the book tables on both sides with an open aisle in the middle. So pretend we have that same situation. There's two long tables here and I'm going to start moving. I really want to get to the students in the back of the room and I'm going to move the camera, okay? So it's on the dolly wheels. It's focused on the back as I'm moving, and my frame is going to be not changing a whole lot. So as I move until I pass by the people sitting on the sides, they will be in the frame with us. Okay, we don't just zoom in and lose them. They stay in the frame until the camera passes them by and we get to the end, and then it focuses in on the couple of people sitting on the back. I think in the book it's the back right table. Okay, so I want you to think about it as if you were working the camera. What would you see? Okay, that is the end of our review for the exam. If you have anything that you don't understand from my bulleted list I sent you of concepts, or anything from the chapter that doesn't make sense, email or call and I will help explain it to you. We're also going to right now in our virtual classroom take your questions concerning anything from our review. Okay, so let's return to the classroom and see what questions you might have.